So today is the 21st day of Tishrei, Hoshana Rabbah. And according to, I think it's according to Kabbalah, I don't think there's an earlier source. Maybe there is. I don't know. This is the day on which there's a final sealing of one's I guess, verdict for the whole year. And it's also the 23rd of October. I don't know what happens on 23rd of October. Anything special. In any case, we almost finished. There was one line at the end. We didn't do justice to it. We said that. We kept saying all the time that natural nullification that happens with the first 9 sfirot in the world of emanation is not as good as the type of nullification that comes out of the kingdom of emanation coming down and sustaining life in the 3 lower worlds of consciousness. But here now he says that on the contrary, there's actually something better about it. And how is it better? That's the question here. So he says, where was this? ואין זה כביטול ייחוד העילה שהוא ממילא, לפי שהשם מתגלה גם בהם, וגם שם הוא ביטול אמיתי כזיב, מה שאין כן בביטול היש שמכל מקום הוא יש. So he says, really the reason is that it's better is because they never had a sense of separate being. The fact that you don't ever have a sense, that's where our whole analogy really breaks down, because you can't say that children, boys, don't have a sense of separate being. They have just as much a sense of separate being from their father that the girl does. What we were talking about is specifically about their power of intellect, their intellectual powers. Naturally they're supposed to have a feeling that I'm just an extension of my father. I don't know if people always have that. That's not, but that's how it's brought in Chassidus, that in that respect the person can feel that he's entirely the ni of his father, as the Gemara says, bra kara de avua, which means that it's like you take a vine off the vine in the vineyard, and you do an act called a ni. A ni means kneeing. I don't know what they call it in English, but in Hebrew it's called havracha.
What is it, actually? So
you take a vine and you pull it down to the ground. You make a little slit on the bottom. You don't break it. You just make a little slit. So it's like a knee, so it can bend a little.
Like candy, right?
And then you cover it with earth, and it grows a new vine that way. So the new vine, that's how vines work, right? The vines are you just like proliferate. It's not, grafting is taking one thing and adding it onto something else. Here it's the thing itself. You're making it into a new vine, with its own source of water and earth, and so on. So they have that. In any case, going back to the kingdom of emanation, Malchus d'Atzilus v'chinyan som tasim alecha melech, כנודע שלשון מלוכה לא שייך אלה כשמקבלים עול מלכותו עליהם ברצון. And this is the mitzvah that we haven't learned yet, but here he does discuss it, the mitzvah of appointing a king. That the Torah says you shall place upon you a king. And kingdom, he says, you can't have a king unless you accept him willingly. And will is involved. Free will is involved in making a king. So a king who is not accepted willingly by the people is not a king. Doesn't work. And this can only happen in the 3 lower worlds, because that's where you have people who have separate beings that have separate consciousness, that they feel that they are separate from the source. והיינו על ידי צמצום והסתר ואלם החיות שמסתתר מתעלם כאילו הם יש בדבר נפרד ולא מבחינת גילוי כמו בעילה ועלול. And again, this is all talking not about the physical matter. Physical matter everywhere is completely separate. Nobody can describe how this is God. You can't bow down to this. There's no way you can say, oh, this flesh is part of God. Even a part you can't say. Because with physical matter, it's a different story altogether. Here we're talking about the consciousness of the life force inside of me, the chayut, the chayus. Again, we said that certainly in the East they call this by its name, which is very similar, CHI, and that, of course, they're not aware of this at all as being connected to God. They think that this is nature, and this is the place to tell an incredible story from the Chida's grandfather. The Chida is one of the most important scholars in the last 200 years. He appeared around the time of the Alter Rebbe, a little bit earlier. They're pretty much equivalent in their years, 1780, 1790, and he went around the Jewish world. He started out in Italy. They were Italians, and he ended up all the way in Eretz Yisrael. But in the end, he didn't stay here. He went back to Europe, and his remains were brought by Rav Eliyahu a few 20 years ago.
I was looking from the Sfaradim.
Yeah, they're originally Moroccan. Yeah, Azulai.
He comes from
But they came from Italy. No, his father.
Yeah.
So he brought his remains from wherever in Italy they were, and now he's buried right next to him. Okay.
He's buried next to him?
Yeah, he brought his remains.
Wow. I didn't read that.
Yeah, they're in the same home.
Wow.
I should go there. In any case, so he was a tremendous scholar in all areas, and one of his most important works that everybody learned was called Chesed LaAvram. It's a Kabbalistic work. He sort of summarized all the Kitvei Arizal, all the writings of the Arizal. And again, he was a very, very special individual. Again, his grandfather. In some respects, he was greater than him. So I think in terms of scholarship, he was probably a greater posek. But for instance, one of the things we have from the Chida, not from the grandfather, his name was Avraham. And the Chida is Chaim Yosef David. So for something we have from the Chida that we're going to finish today, we're going to say it two more last times. The 101st and 102nd time we're going to say it this Elul Tishrei is the David Hashem Uri V'ishi. It's from him. This addition that we have at the end of Shachris and Mincha by Chasidim, Shachris and Ma'ariv by non-Chasidim. So the story about him, I don't know how the story came about. Don't ask me about where it came from, but it's a well-known story. Is that after he passed away, the Chesed LaAvram, he had a yeshiva in Shamayim, like he had a yeshiva here, and all the souls would come to learn with him. And then, sometime after he's teaching there, he's been there for 50, 60 years. Suddenly, he notices that at some point in their learning, all the souls disappear. They all go. They rush out of the chamber where he's teaching, and they go somewhere. So he's very interested. Why is everybody leaving? Where are they going? So he follows them. One time he decided to see what this is. So he sees that they're all rushing down to see this man. His name is Elimelech of Lizhensk. His name is Elimelech, they don't know him. And they rush down to see him move his finger. What is this? So he's very upset at them. He says, how can you leave the source of living waters, what I'm teaching, to go see someone in the world of the physical world moving his finger? What's wrong with you? You didn't get it. So what is this? Well, first of all, where the story came from, what it means, and what it means I think I know, but how did somebody even come up with this story? Why did they tell it this way? Was it a dream or something else? I don't know. But in any case, the meaning that Rav Ginsburg gives to this is phenomenal. He says that when a tzaddik moves his finger, it is all compassion. It's all God's compassion. That's what he feels. What do you mean? That when we move, because we're talking about the life force inside of us, what allows us to do what we do as physical bodies. And that's what we're talking about. That in the world below emanation, we feel that this is disconnected. We don't know where it comes from. We just feel the life force, but we don't know what it is. So a tzaddik, he says, when he moves even his finger, for him, that's a sign of Hashem's compassion. And what's the verse? Kol atzmotai tomarna Hashem mi kamocha. That all my bones will say, Hashem, who is like you. But the stress here is on Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the name of Hashem's rachmim, of his compassion. Right? That's the big deal, that Hashem is compassion. So that compared even to learning is more. Because even when you're learning Torah, the Torah before the Baal Shem Tov was not yet the Torah of compassion. It was still a Torah that was judicial, it was very justice-oriented. So even the Chida was teaching Kabbalah before the Baal Shem Tov, but still it's not the Torah of compassion yet. So he says something very interesting. After he explained the story, he says, if you see this in a true tzaddik, you see that every move he makes is a declaration of Hashem's compassion, meaning he's aware that the life force inside of him is Hashem's compassion. It didn't have to be this way. And then you go to...
Didn't have to be this way?
Who says I have to be able to move my finger? Again, that's the life force inside of me. There's nothing that animates this finger that's not coming from its source. But we're not aware of it. We just move our finger and we're done with it. We don't care. We don't think about it twice.
Yeah, but they are aware of moving.
But he is aware that every single move that he can make is Hashem's compassion. He says, this is the big difference between a tzaddik and all the Eastern exercises, all the martial arts, all the Tai Chi, all these things. That what do they do there? They only have, even when they say that this is a higher force, they only go as far as what they call Elokim. The name Elokim. Elokim means nature. I mean, they attribute this to nature. They say this is to be naturally good. And Elokim is all din, it's all judgment. Meaning, in other words, that they have no recognition that this is God's gift to them. They just feel that this is naturally, this is how it's supposed to be. You can take it for granted. So even though they've perfected it and they've done it in all kinds of ways and have incredible meaning, but all you're going to get there, the most is, they call him, there's a pasuk in Jeremiah, Elaka de Lakaya. They call him the God of gods. But it's not Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's not Hashem's compassion. That's why all these things, if you practice them, you're connecting to judgment. You're connecting to, and what does judgment mean? That I don't feel that there's Hashem above me. I don't feel that there's Hashem giving me this as a free gift. That's what's missing. That's what compassion is. Good? And so that's what we don't have in the three lower worlds. So we move and we do and we have everything. We can perfect these movements and so on. But it's impossible in the consciousness of the three lower worlds to come to a understanding that this is all Hashem's gift to me. Okay? And that's why these things are very problematic for most people, that they can't elevate.
Same thing in science. In science,
yeah.
No one knows where does it come from.
Where does it come from? Right. The origin is missing.
I had this chus many years ago when I lived in Sfat to observe very closely the fate of the previous Lulav Rebbe, Reb Shimon. He was an incredible man. There a lot. And I watched him, and I realized there was no extraneous move in everything he did. And I mentioned it to an older chassid who knew the father. He said it was a father to him. Nothing, there was no extraneous, nothing was extraneous in his movements. Nothing.
Everything was he was conscious of it. He was conscious of what he was doing.
It was something that I never saw before in my life.
So I have to tell you, after I heard this class from Rav Ginsburg, I changed the whole way that I do my exercises in the morning.
Physical exercise,
yeah,
really.
I do like 40 minutes every morning. Now I have to because of my gallbladder.
Yeah.
So it changed everything. The moment I heard this, and I'm surprised I missed it. But okay, so I think we need to.
It's the chida because the chida is CHI in the beginning.
Right. The whole thing is.
Isn't that
Okay, so this is finally chapter 23. We're finished in Sukkot, and hopefully on Friday we'll start chapter 24.
I wonder also whether the finger has the sphere also. The finger is sphere.
It could be that's why the story is. He didn't explain it. Yeah, I think that's related to "En adam nokef etzma milamata, elam ken machazim alav minemala." It's probably.
Go ahead.